So this week is all about sustained energy. Sustained energy is all about timing and input, how we can manage that energy from the start of the day, throughout the day, to the end of the day. We're getting the foundations right. So today we're going to remove diet confusion. We're going to replace willpower with structure. And by the end, you must choose one clear action that's going to move you forward. You can't scale a business unless the operations are sound. That means timing is everything. Hello.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, everyone.
How are we all?
Wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen. If you could all just give me a thumbs up to say that you can see the screen. Excellent. Good stuff.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks, Max. So this week is all about sustained energy. We'll go into how this fits in a second, but I want to run through the objectives. So the objectives for today, I'm not going to read through them, but sustained energy is all about timing and input, how we can manage that energy from the start of the day, throughout the day, to the end of the day. This is about stabilizing your operations. As you remember, we're in the operations department. That's the layer of the pyramid that we're in. So we're not optimizing yet. We're getting the foundations right. So today we're going to remove diet confusion. We're going to replace willpower with structure. And by the end, you must choose one clear action or one or two clear actions that's going to move you forward. So just a reminder of where we are at the pyramid. Last session, we did the business modeling. So this is the foundational inputs of light, oxygen, and magnetism. Hopefully you guys took a couple actions from that session last week and have implemented them already. Now we move on to the first official layer of the pyramid, which is the fixed cycle. And our primary organ in this layer is the gut. And as you know, if your business operations is bad, it's like building a house on sand. The foundations just aren't there. You can't scale a business unless the operations are sound. So we're going to be focusing today on the biological rhythm called the metabolic rhythm. And that's what sustained energy is all about, hence the name, right? So we're going to be measuring cortisol or learning about cortisol and insulin, and the two KPIs that are going to tell us whether we're managing these effectively are going to be our recovery percentage and body fat. So with your Garmin's, this will be like your training readiness score or your body battery. So what these KPIs are telling us is, one, how well we're managing our cortisol, and two, how well we're managing our insulin. This layer is unstable. Nothing above it can scale. So it's pointless having really good sales and marketing if your operations aren't very good at all. So again, a reminder of where we are in the hierarchy. So we are in the operations department, and the team that we're looking at today is the office team and the operations manager and inventory. So if you imagine, cortisol is like your operations manager, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail, but the operations manager starts in the morning. It's the person that gets everyone going at the beginning of the day, and that's what cortisol does. It gets you going at the beginning of the day. It briefs the team. It makes sure that everyone has their instructions for the day and they know exactly what they're doing. That's what cortisol does. So what is cortisol? So cortisol is normally framed as the bad guy, the stress hormone, but the problem isn't cortisol. It is poor timing. It's the operations manager. It mobilizes your energy. It gets you up. So cortisol starts massively being released before you actually wake up. Cortisol is the hormone that gets you up in the morning. So you need strong cortisol in the morning. That's healthy. It's when it's strong in the evening, it's not healthy. So this is the point. You want cortisol to support you as you're getting up in the morning. So high in the morning means performance. High at night means stress. And that's where cortisol gets its bad name, is because people manage it incorrectly and know that cortisol is causing them stress, which is true, but because it's high later on in the day. So this is how cortisol should look. So I know I've explained it, but this is a really, really good visual on how cortisol should flow. So obviously you would adjust the times based on when you get up, even shift work. Like if you work at night, you should be able to adjust these timings because you can make it so that whenever you get up, you use the tools to spike your cortisol. So basically, when you get up, you spike it all the way up as high as you possibly can. And that is the point where you want to be doing all of your high performance tasks. So high performance tasks, exercise, deep work, any challenging or hard conversations that you've got to have throughout the day, like that is the best time. And this is the sort of like first 0 to 8 hours after you getting up. That's where you want all of your sort of high mental focus and high energy output tasks to happen. And then what happens, as you can see, is it gradually declines throughout the afternoon. And that's a great time for things like meetings, calls, or other meetings and calls that aren't like your high value or really challenging meetings or calls. Family time and lower value tasks like admin that you've got to get done is great to be done sort of as you get into the afternoon. And then the evening, it's got to be low. So by it being low and you doing all the things that you do can taper off the cortisol, this is what allows melatonin to rise. So when we were talking about the light exposure in the last presentation, the light exposure is, again, what spikes your cortisol first thing in the morning, which is why it's really important to get that light in within the first 60 minutes of waking up. So again, the problem is the mistiming of cortisol. This is probably one of the most important hormones to focus on, because if you manage this right, a lot of the other hormones fall into place, hence operations manager. If the right briefing happens at the beginning of the day, all of the staff know what they're doing throughout the day. That's essentially the flow of cortisol. So that means timing is everything. These are the three things, if you get right, apart from the light thing, so light that we did in the previous session where you're getting the light exposure, that is probably one of the most important things for cortisol spiking. But these are the other three things that you can do to really spike your cortisol. So number one, these are the first sort of 0 to 8 hours of days. Get all the hard stuff done first. The harder the stuff that you get done, the things that require a high heart rate, lots of adrenaline, right? That's all the stuff that you want to be doing at the beginning of the day, because it's all the stuff that spikes your cortisol in the right direction at the beginning of the day. But if you imagine, if you did all this stuff at the end of the day, if you exercised, if you had hard conversations, if you did really high energy work, if you had arguments with people or conflicts, do that at the end of the day. And guess what? It spikes your cortisol, which is where you don't want to spike it. And then number two is your 9 to 15 hours. This is the second phase of your day. This is where you want to start tapering off your workload and reducing down stress, right? You don't want really stressful stuff happening past sort of the 2 p.m. window, right? That's where you want to bring down your workload. And I think as entrepreneurs that manage their day effectively, like a lot of us will naturally do that anyways, but if you're not, it's a clear indicator that's the type of stuff that you should be doing. And then last but not least is the actively calm and sleep. So the last sort of 1 to 2 hours that you're awake, which is your 16 and 17 hours, this is where you want to really be calming down. And I want to make something really, really apparent here, and you can get into real detail with this, is on your wearable devices, it constantly measures your heart rate. You obviously know what your resting heart rate is when you're sleeping, and that's sort of like your lowest heart rate point. What you want to do, and the target, is to get your heart rate as low as possible, ideally within a few beats of your resting heart rate. So if your resting heart rate is, let's call it 50, right, or 55, you want to make sure that your heart rate when you're just about to go to sleep is within a few beats of that. So if it's 50, you want to make sure it's at about 54, 53, 55, something along those lines before you close your eyes and go to sleep. Not only will it make it easier for you to get to sleep if you can get your heart rate down, but it will also make sure that you release the right stuff while you're asleep to recover better and get into those deep sleep and REM sleeps, which is what we were struggling with form a little bit, was basically getting those to work as optimally as possible. Because if you can get the restorative sleep in, that's where you get the best recovery. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of things that can significantly raise your heart rate that we potentially will do in the evening. You've got violent TV, watching sports, right? I've actually stopped watching Man United when they have 8 o'clock games because it really raises my heart rate. So Mark will resonate with me on that one.
Me too. Yeah, not after 7:30, mate. I can't do after 7 now.
Yeah, so watching sports, exercise, arguments. I know it's sometimes difficult with your significant other or kids when they're not doing what you want them to do, but try and stay calm when you're in these arguments. If you can, take a deep breath and say, look, I understand where you're coming from. Is there any way we can go into this into a lot of detail tomorrow, first thing in the morning? Because right now I'm really trying to calm down for sleep. I know sometimes that's difficult, but actually it's a really good habit to get yourself into. Anyways, next one. So this one is all about fat and managing of fat. So most people, they don't want to be fat. They think fat is the enemy. It isn't. The real issue is where fat is stored. And I want to give you a full spectrum of where our fat is stored and whether it's good or bad. So we've got 3 predominant types of fat. Interestingly, it's sat, bat, and vat, right? And sat, which is the fat that we see. This is the stuff that we normally call fat, right? And fat is described as adipose tissue, which is why we've got SAT, which is described as subcutaneous adipose tissue. That's the most science I'm going to go into, but basically that's the fat that you see, and it's all cosmetic. Subcutaneous fat is neutral metabolically. It's not bad for you. It's not good for you. It's just where you store fat. And something that I want to point out here is we all have our own personal SAT storage. So some people can store a lot more fat before it turns into bad fat. And other people don't store very much fat before it goes into bad fat. So when you see someone skinny, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're metabolically healthy. They could have a lot of bad fat on them just because they don't have as much fat storage as other people. So I've always said I've got a lot of fat storage. I hold on to fat very well. But if you struggle to gain fat, that is actually a sign that you don't have very much fat storage. And this is something you've got to watch out for, which is where BAT and VAT come in. So the reason why that we're measuring VAT, which is visceral fat, and that's something that you measure on your body pod. Visceral fat is the bad fat. And this is the stuff that is stored around your organs. Now, the other fat, which is only stored in particular parts of the body, is very good fat. And I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's called brown fat. Have you guys heard of mitochondria?
I have, but I have no idea what it is.
Biology, but I can't remember what it is. It's like something in a cell.
That's fine. I don't want to go into it too much, but basically mitochondria is like the energy within your cells. It's like the power cells. And essentially, brown fat is full of mitochondria. So it helps with you producing energy. So the more brown fat you have, that's really good. And ice baths, again, won't go into it in detail, but ice baths are one of the things, and the shiver response is something that promotes brown fat. So brown fat is good, visceral fat is bad, and the fat that you see on the outside of your body is neutral. If you're thin or if you're fat, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're metabolically unhealthy. What decides whether you're metabolically unhealthy or not is the fat that you have stored around your organs, which is visceral fat, which is why we measure it. So you are at what and when you eat. So this is really important. Here's some examples, and we'll go through the Nova scale in a bit more detail, but here's some examples of some stuff that would be considered ultra processed. And we need to switch from this ultra processed stuff to this stuff. And I have a saying that I've been saying to myself ever since 2015. I came up with this in 2015 when I got divorced and I was trying to look my best. And I just lived by one saying. It basically was, if you can't grow it or kill it, spill it or throw it. How you can manage your calories. And there's only essentially 3 ways that you can manage your calories. Caloric restriction, which is basically tracking your calories. Timing restriction, which is essentially fasting, reducing the amount of time that you have to eat. And then dietary restriction, which is removing an entire macro, essentially. So removing either fats, carbs, or protein. So I'm just going to open it up to the floor a little bit. Does anyone want to share what type of diet or way of eating would work best for them?
Yes, I think I'll go. So because I had a lot of success so far this year from sort of like 10th of December, so pre that gain of Christmas weight, I'm now down about 8 kilos.
Nice.
And I would say the biggest thing, as well as sugar and alcohol, which you touched on at the beginning, is actually reducing my carbs. I know, like, I've had a couple of pizzas and stuff like that. I go out with the family, and I notice how quickly that sends me into a craving mood where I want to scoff and eat as much as possible. And even like the nights that I've drunk, like, or eaten loads of sugar, then how much that affects me for a few days. And it takes me a few days to get back to the point where now I don't feel overly hungry, I don't overeat, and I feel in control of food for the first time in my life, I would say.
Wow.
But yeah, so I would say for me, reducing the carbs and increasing the protein, because I was probably having under 80 to 100, I would say maximum. Akash did that talk in September, October, whenever it was. Then since then, I've been aiming for a high amount. So making sure I have the protein, reducing the carbs, and then pretty much within that, doing whatever I feel I want to do and need to do. Replacing a snack, so replacing the sugar in the evening was if I'm hungry, and if I need to eat, then I've got high protein Lidl yogurt, which is low in UPFs.
Excellent. I think just touching on that, you've made a really, really good point with carbs is refined sugar, like that is carbohydrates. So that can work for a lot of people, but what worked for me, and this is my share, is I just love fasting. Like fasting works really well for me. But obviously, Chris, when you and me had your discussion, that wouldn't work for you, and this is my point, is it's not you've got a diet and it's one size fits all. You've got to make it work for you. So what we'll move on to now is just the Nova scale so that we get a really, really good understanding of this. So group 1, as you know, is unprocessed or minimally processed foods. And what we want to make sure here is that we keep 70% of our time in this area. The rule is that this area needs to be minimum 70%. And then we've got group 2. These are all sort of like, they're not bad for you. And actually, extra virgin olive oil with a high polyphenol count is very, very good for you. Probably one of the best things for you in small amounts. And you don't want to be eating them in a massive quantity anyways. While they're very good for you, nuts, they are quite caloric dense. So you don't want to be eating too many of them. And obviously you've got group 3, and this is where your sort of sourdough breads, your traditionally made breads, your cheeses, and vegetables fall into here, and things like bacon fall into here because they're not highly processed meats, but they are considered processed meats. So the things that you've got to be careful of in group 4, some things are bloody obvious, like your soft drinks, your chocolates, your sweets, your burgers and fries, and really high sugar cereals. Like that's all obvious stuff. If you don't know what the ingredient is, it's probably group 4. Anything with emulsifiers, gums, like preservatives, anything like that in there, that would be considered group 4.
I'll be interested to see what you think. I've just put the photos at the back of my one into the board. I get it made at a local health food, into our group, sorry.
Yeah.
It's made by a guy that owns the local health food shop. And I chat to him now and then. He just like so excited about how healthy and good this one is. And it's actually not that expensive as well. It's only a little bit more expensive than Huel. If you buy 2, you get a discount. So for anyone,
wow, yeah, just looking at this, mate, this looks very, very good. So these are the 3 things that you just need to remember when it comes to insulin management or managing your inventory within your body. What gets stored, what gets used. So eat real food, the Nova 70-20-10. That's got to be primary. Then it's a consistent eating window. It's got to be what works for you. Remember, if you can't kill it or grow it, spill it or throw it. And then what works for you, the eating window, just try and keep it to a 60-minute variance either side. If you need to go to 90 minutes, that's fine on occasion. But if you can keep it to below 60 minutes, that's brilliant. The main point is starting eating at the same time, finishing eating at the same time. And then prioritize protein. So write this down, 1.5 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of ideal body weight. And I'm emphasizing ideal body weight because if you're overweight, you don't want to do it on your current weight. You want to do it on the weight that you want to get to. So this here is your 1-page framework. So if you want me to send out the whole slide deck, I can, absolutely. But if you're going to take a screenshot and remember anything, this is the slide that you want to screenshot. Got to remember these 3 things to manage your timing of cortisol, to get your operations manager doing the things they should do. And that's, you want to spike it first thing with light exercise, caffeine, and 10x work, right? 10x work is just your highest value work that you can possibly do in the day. Then number 2 is your afternoon slowdown, family time, calls, admin, and obviously your last meal so that you're eating within that sort of 3 to 4 hour period before you go to bed. And then calm fully to a low heart rate, the circular breathing, the non-sleep deep rest, the no stimulation. So that's really, really important. The next thing is insulin management. So these are the 2 things that we've spoken about today: cortisol timing, insulin management. And these are the 3 things that you need to remember. 70-20-10 Nova scale, whole food priority, read the label. Right? Get into the habit, Max looking at your protein, or Chris looking at the bread that you're buying. Absolutely. Look at the ingredients, and then same eat time and get your protein in. These are the only things that really, if you get them absolutely nailed, your cortisol timing will be there and your insulin management will be there. We're all pretty much done with this session. So anyone that's got to leave at 12, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. Great session. Really appreciate it. Spot on.
Thank you very much,
Cheers.
everyone. Hopefully you got a lot from that, and we'll speak next week.
Thank you very much.
Lovely.
Amazing. See you later.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you, Grant.
I'm going to let you crack on with your day. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, dude. See you later.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
See you later.